There's a Midwest state where net domestic migration was negative 28,539 in the year ending July 2025, where population growth has been flat for over a decade, where the automotive base that anchored the state economy has been under sustained restructuring pressure, and where the residents who can leave keep quietly choosing the Southeast. The state is Michigan, and it's not even alone on this list. Across America's Midwest, the migration story of 2026 has been quieter and stranger than the headlines suggest. Not the coastal boom, not the Sun Belt reversal. The Midwest, where the pandemic-era migration story never really arrived, where the Great Lakes climate migration narrative kept getting projected without materializing, and where the population base has been contracting or stagnating for over a decade while nobody was watching. According to Census Bureau, vintage 2025 estimates released in March 2026, 4 Midwest states experienced net domestic migration losses exceeding 5,000 residents in the year, ending July 2025. According to Redfin's analysis of Zillow's 2025 hottest housing markets, affordable Midwest cities including Rockford, Toledo, Dearborn, and South Bend led national rankings on affordability grounds. But the affordability reflects sustained value stagnation rather than durable growth. According to Brookings Metro analysis of vintage 2025 estimates, most Midwest metros depend heavily on international immigration to offset domestic outflow, and the 2024-2025 immigration slowdown exposed the underlying pattern. According to U-Haul Growth Index rankings, no Midwest state has appeared in the top 10 inbound migration destinations in 2024 or 2025. And underneath those numbers, the pattern is not subtle. Small towns emptying, manufacturing employment restructuring, rural hospitals closing, property values stagnating, working-age residents heading south while retirees stay put. In this countdown, we're exposing 10 Midwest states no one is moving to anymore in 2026. Not the cliché version where every Rust Belt state is dying. The real one. The version where Census Bureau MSA data, IRS statistics of income migration data, and U-Haul Growth Index records show sustained deceleration or reversal of the migration pattern that historically anchored the region. One state on this list saw net domestic migration reach negative 28,539 in a single year. Another has watched its net outflow accelerate for 6 consecutive years. A third has grown only through international immigration that just slowed by 54% nationally. A fourth had the highest foreclosure rate in America in Q1 2026. A fifth had its state auditor publicly declare the budget broken. Subscribe before your Midwest state's next census update. Like the video if you live in the Midwest and have watched your kids leave for Charlotte, Nashville, or Austin. Let's break it down. Number 10, South Dakota. The Mount Rushmore state where the small population growth has masked minimal in-migration relative to what other regions attract, and where the reliance on international immigration has been quietly documented. There's a state where the population growth reached only marginal levels in the year ending July 2025, where the rural counties continue to lose population, where the economic base depends heavily on agriculture and tourism, and where the aggregate growth story obscures sustained rural contraction. Welcome to South Dakota. The numbers. South Dakota population grew modestly in the year ending July 2025 per Census Vintage 2025. South Dakota rural counties have continued to lose population. South Dakota economic base depends heavily on agriculture and tourism. South Dakota taxpayer surplus per Truth in Accounting 2025 remains among the strongest in America. South Dakota housing market has remained relatively stable, but with limited in-migration relative to Southeast peers. South Dakota median resident age has climbed alongside the national trend. What it's like. Living in South Dakota is like dating someone reliable and quiet whose social circle has been the same for 20 years. Picture this. You're a 51-year-old rural South Dakota resident in 2026. Your neighborhood has multiple homes for sale that have not moved. Your local grain elevator restructured operations in 2024. Your neighbor at the hospital mentioned that staffing shortages continue. Your kids left for Denver and Minneapolis in the 2010s. Your local grain elevator has scaled operations back this fall, where it gets uncomfortable. South Dakota's structural problem is that the aggregate growth story depends on immigration to specific metro areas, while rural counties continue to contract. The immigration is slowing. The rural contraction continues. The aggregate stability obscures the underlying divergence. The international immigration that historically supported growth has slowed by 54% nationally. Sharp contrast. South Dakota and North Dakota are direct neighbors with similar demographics. Both have experienced similar patterns. South Dakota has slightly more diversified employment than North Dakota's oil-dependent base. Number 9. North Dakota, the Peace Garden state, where oil-driven growth has decelerated substantially, where the Bakken region employment has moderated, and where the aggregate population trajectory has flattened. There's a state where oil price volatility has produced sustained revenue swings, where the Bakken region employment has moderated from peak boom-era levels, where the population growth has flattened, and where the tax base concentra, TED in specific counties, has softened. Welcome to North Dakota. The numbers. North Dakota Bakken region employment has moderated from peak boom-era levels. North Dakota oil price volatility has produced sustained revenue swings. North Dakota taxpayer surplus per Truth in Accounting 2025 remains the highest in America at $63,300. North Dakota population growth has flattened from peak boom levels. North Dakota housing market has moderated in oil-adjacent counties. North Dakota population growth rate has flattened significantly from Bakken boom peak. What it's like. Living in North Dakota is like dating someone whose entire income depended on one industry that just had a bad year. Picture this. You're a 47-year-old North Dakota resident in 2026. Your Bakken-adjacent job has been less predictable since 2023. Your neighborhood has multiple homes for sale. Your neighbor at the local oil services firm mentioned that hiring has been paused. Your kids left for Minneapolis and Fargo in the 2010s. Your local school district has consolidated with 2 neighboring districts this year, where it gets uncomfortable. North Dakota's structural problem is that the oil-driven economic model produces population volatility tied to commodity prices. The boom drew residents in the 2010s. The moderation slowed the growth. The oil services workforce compression has hit specific Bakken counties harder. The population base is not expanding at rates comparable to Southeast growth. Sharp contrast. North Dakota and Tennessee are both smaller states. Tennessee has diversified employment beyond commodities. North Dakota has narrower diversification and deeper commodity exposure. Number 8. Nebraska, the Cornhusker state where the aggregate growth story has obscured sustained rural contraction and where the property tax pressure has continued to drive working-age outmigration. There's a state where property tax effective rate reached 1.24%, the 8th highest in America, where the aggregate population growth has moderated substantially, where rural counties continue to lose population, and where the working-age migration to Colorado and Texas has been sustained. Welcome to Nebraska. The numbers. Nebraska effective property tax rate reached 1.24% in 2025 per annum. Nebraska population growth has moderated substantially from peak levels. Nebraska rural counties continue to lose population. Nebraska agricultural land assessments have climbed alongside residential. Nebraska has debated property tax reform for years without producing structural change. Nebraska rural county school enrollment has declined for multiple years. What it's like. Living in Nebraska is like dating someone reliable and sincere who keeps promising to fix the credit card debt while making the minimum payment. Picture this. You're a 58-year-old farmer in central Nebraska in 2026. Your farmland value is up. Your property tax assessment followed. Your state legislator keeps mentioning the reform discussion. Your kids left for Colorado and Texas years ago. Your neighbor at the co-op mentioned the merger discussion has restarted, where it gets uncomfortable. Nebraska's structural problem is that the property tax pressure has continued to drive out-migration, while the reform conversation has not produced structural relief. The property tax climbs alongside farmland assessment increases. The residents who can leave keep leaving. The rural counties continue to contract. The aggregate stability obscures the underlying compression. Sharp contrast. Nebraska and Colorado are direct neighbors. Ours, Colorado, has attracted Nebraska outmigration for 2 decades. Nebraska has continued to lose working-age residents. Hey, before we get into the top 7, the states we're about to cover are the ones where the Midwest migration deceleration has been most extensively documented in Census Bureau Vintage 2025 estimates, in Brookings Metro analysis, and in U-Haul Growth Index records. If this list has been useful, hit subscribe, because the next one is 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled, and you'll want to see if your city is on the list. Like the video if you live in the Midwest and have watched your kids leave for the Southeast. Drop a comment if your Midwest state just posted another year of population stagnation. Now let's keep going. Number 7. Iowa. The Hawkeye state where the property tax pressure has continued to compound, where the manufacturing employment has evolved slowly toward electric vehicle production, and where the aggregate growth story has depended on international immigration. There's a state where effective property tax rate reached 1.25%, the 7th highest in America, where 200 state IT workers were laid off in 2025 as part of an outsourcing decision, where the manufacturing employment continues to face restructuring, and where the aggregate growth has depended heavily on international immigration. Welcome to Iowa. The numbers. Iowa. Effective property tax rate reached 1.25% in 2025 per annum. Iowa laid off more than 200 state IT workers in 2025, per KCCI. Iowa manufacturing employment continues to face restructuring pressure. Iowa aggregate population growth has depended heavily on international immigration. Iowa net domestic migration has been modest or negative in recent years. Iowa aggregate growth story tested structurally as immigration slowed nationally. What it's like. Living in Iowa is like dating someone wholesome and reliable who just sent the whole IT department a buyout email and called it spring cleaning. Picture this. You're a 49-year-old Iowa resident in 2026. Your property tax bill climbed for the 6th consecutive year. Your neighbor at a state agency accepted an early retirement package. Your local school district faces sustained enrollment pressure. Your kids left for Chicago, Denver, and Nashville. Your spouse mentions the tax bill every February when it arrives. Where it gets uncomfortable. Iowa's structural problem is that the aggregate growth has depended on international immigration that just slowed by 54% nationally. The immigration slowed. The domestic outmigration continues. The manufacturing restructuring continues alongside state IT workforce reduction. And the aggregate growth story is testing structurally. Sharp contrast. Iowa and Colorado are both states residents leave Iowa for. Colorado has continued to attract Iowa outmigration. Iowa has continued to lose working-age residents. Number 6. Minnesota. The North Star state where the property tax pressure has been substantial, where projected 2026 increases reach 6.9% statewide, and where the growth story has moderated from historical rates. There's a state where preliminary 2026 property tax increases are projected at $948 million over 2025, a 6.9% statewide jump, where the migration outflow to Wisconsin has expanded, where the pension obligations continue to compound, and where the working age outmigration has been documented. Welcome to Minnesota. The numbers. Minnesota preliminary 2026 property tax increases projected at $948.2 million, a 6.9% statewide jump. Minnesota migration to Wisconsin has expanded substantially due to property tax differential. Minnesota median home price has climbed past $375,000. Minnesota pension obligations continue to compound. Minnesota population growth has moderated from historical rates. Minnesota working age outmigration to Wisconsin, Texas, and Florida has been documented. What it's like. Living in Minnesota is like dating someone outdoorsy and friendly who keeps quietly insisting the lakes are worth what you're paying for them. Picture this. You're a 49-year-old in suburban Minneapolis in 2026. Your property tax bill is climbing again in 2026, with the state projecting a 6.9% statewide increase. Your colleague moved to Wisconsin in 2024 and reports tax bills meaningfully lower. Your kids are researching Nashville and Charlotte. Your spouse forwarded a Zillow listing from Wisconsin last week, where it gets uncomfortable. Minnesota's structural problem is that the local property tax pressure has continued to climb, despite the state's relatively strong income tax revenue position. The local levies have not adjusted downward. The Minnesota to Wisconsin migration corridor has expanded due to the property tax differential. The working age out migration has been documented in census data. Sharp contrast. Minnesota and Wisconsin are direct neighbors. Wisconsin's effective property tax rates sit slightly below Minnesota's projected 2026 levels. Same upper Midwest geography. Very different 2026 trajectories. Number 5. Indiana. The Hoosier state where the foreclosure rate topped the national list in Q1 2026, where the manufacturing employment continues to restructure, and where the aggregate growth has been modest despite affordability advantages. There's a state where Indiana had the highest foreclosure rate in America in Q1 2026 at 1 in every 739 housing units, where median home prices climbed 35% between 2020 and 2024 against modest wage growth, where the manufacturing base has been under sustained restructuring pressure, and where the aggregate migration has been modest. Welcome to Indiana. The numbers. Indiana had the highest foreclosure rate in America in Q1 2026 per Adam. Indiana median home prices climbed approximately 35% between 2020 and 2024. Indiana manufacturing employment continues to face restructuring pressure. Indiana median household income has not climbed at the pace home values did. Indiana aggregate migration has been modest relative to Southeast peers. Indiana median household income has stagnated relative to home price growth. What it's like. Living in Indiana is like dating someone reliable and sincere who just maxed out 3 credit cards you didn't know about. Picture this. You're a 41-year-old in suburban Indianapolis in 2026. Your home value is up. Your property tax is up faster. Your neighbor 2 houses down lost their job at the auto-adjacent plant in 2024. Your kids are researching Nashville. Your friend at the auto-adjacent supplier accepted a buyout in the spring. Where it gets uncomfortable. Indiana's structural problem is that the price appreciation outpaced wage growth, and the buyers who absorbed the higher prices are now struggling with carrying costs. The foreclosure rate crossed the national leader line. The manufacturing restructuring continues. The aggregate migration is not compensating. Sharp contrast. Indiana and Tennessee are both Middle America states. Tennessee has strong pension funding and higher migration. Indiana has weaker migration despite affordability advantages. Number 4. Missouri. The show-me state where the state auditor publicly declared the budget broken, where $5.8 billion surplus evaporated to $600 million in 3 years, and where the migration outflow has continued at sustained rates. There's a state where the General Revenue Fund declined from a $5.8 billion surplus to a projected $600 million in 3 years, where the state auditor publicly described the budget as broken in June 2026, where net domestic migration was negative 7,612 in 2024-2025, and where the fiscal deterioration compounds household-level pressure. Welcome to Missouri. The numbers. Missouri General Revenue Fund declined from $5.8 billion surplus to projected $600 million in 3 years. Missouri State Auditor Scott Fitzpatrick publicly described the budget as broken in June 2026. Missouri faces a projected $1.7 billion deficit if the budget is not balanced. Missouri net domestic migration was negative 7,612 in the year ending July 2025. Missouri General Revenue Fund is on track to be completely exhausted by 2028, per the auditor's projections. Missouri net domestic migration outflow accelerated in 2024-2025 as fiscal warnings materialized. What it's like. Living in Missouri is like dating someone with a great heart who keeps quietly admitting they are losing money every month. Picture this. You're a 45-year-old Missouri resident in 2026. Your property tax bill climbed alongside the school district's funding pressure. Your state legislator mentioned the auditor's warning. Your neighbor sold and moved to Tennessee in 2024. Your kids left for Nashville and Kansas City area. Your friend at a state agency accepted an early retirement package. Where it gets uncomfortable. Missouri's structural problem is that the fiscal deterioration is now visible in audited state reports and in migration outflow simultaneously. The auditor publicly declared the budget broken. The General Revenue Fund is exhausting. The migration outflow is accelerating. The compounding effect is not subtle. Sharp contrast. Missouri and Tennessee are direct neighbors. Tennessee carries a taxpayer surplus. Missouri carries the audited warning and exhausting reserves. Same region, opposite trajectories. Number 3. Wisconsin. The Badger State, where net domestic migration was negative 8,158 in 2024 to 2025, where property tax pressure has continued to climb, and where the migration to lower-cost states has been sustained for years. There's a state where net domestic migration was negative 8,158 in the year ending July 2025, where the population is aging faster than the national average, where the working age out-migration has been documented for over a decade, and where the aggregate stability obscures sustained working age contraction. Welcome to Wisconsin. The numbers. Wisconsin net domestic migration was negative 8,158 in the year ending July 2025. Wisconsin population is aging faster than the national average. Wisconsin working age out-migration has been sustained for over a decade. Wisconsin property tax pressure has continued to climb. Wisconsin aggregate stability obscures sustained working age contraction. Wisconsin migration to Carolinas and Tennessee has been documented for over a decade. What it's like. Living in Wisconsin is like dating someone friendly and nostalgic whose whole friend group started retiring simultaneously. Picture this. You're a 55-year-old Milwaukee area resident in 2026. Your property tax bill climbed alongside the reassessment cycle. Your kids left for Chicago, Nashville, and Minneapolis over the past decade. Your neighbor at the school district mentioned that enrollment declined. Your friend accepted a job in Charlotte and left in the spring. Your local community college enrollment has declined for 3 consecutive years, where it gets uncomfortable. Wisconsin's structural problem is that the working age out-migration has been sustained for over a decade without a durable reversal. The property taxes climbed. The residents who could leave kept leaving. The population aged. The demographic base contracted. Sharp contrast. Wisconsin and Illinois are both Midwest states. Both have experienced sustained outmigration. Wisconsin's outflow is smaller in absolute terms, but similar in structural pattern. Number 2, Ohio, the Buckeye State, where net domestic migration was negative 23,094 in 2024-2025, where Cuyahoga County reassessments compounded the property tax pressure, and where the outflow has continued alongside the demographic contraction. There's a state where net domestic migration was negative 23,094 in the year ending July 2025, where Cuyahoga County reassessments produced double-digit property tax increases for many homeowners, where the population is contracting in specific metros, and where the migration to the Carolinas has been sustained. Welcome to Ohio. The numbers. Ohio net domestic migration was negative 23,094 in the year ending July 2025. Ohio Cuyahoga County reassessments in 2024 produced double-digit property tax increases. Ohio, effective property tax rate reached 1.32%, the 5th highest in America. Ohio, Cleveland Metro, Property tax appeals filings spiked over 40% in 2025. Ohio outmigration to the Carolinas has been sustained for over a decade. Ohio Columbus growth has masked Cleveland and Toledo contraction. Reddit, quote, Ohio is the state where the reassessments hit the homeowners who already had the least room to absorb them, and the residents who could leave started making the plans in earnest. What it's like. Living in Ohio is like dating someone who's been quietly running up a tab while telling you the relationship is affordable. Picture this. You're a 71-year-old retiree in suburban Cleveland in 2026. Your property tax bill in 2025 after the Cuyahoga reassessment was $3,600. Your retirement income did not climb 28% to match. Your kids left for Columbus and Nashville years ago. Your neighbor sold and moved to North Carolina in 2024. Your local school district faces enrollment pressure alongside the assessment shock. Where it gets uncomfortable. Ohio's structural problem is that the reassessment shocks concentrate pain in specific years and in specific counties, producing shock-level increases residents did not budget for. The home values caught up. The assessments followed. The bills climbed faster than fixed retirement income could absorb. The migration outflow has accelerated among working-age residents. Sharp contrast. Ohio and Tennessee tell two stories. Tennessee carries a taxpayer surplus of $10,900 and gains residents. Ohio carries a $1,300 burden and loses them. Same country, very different fiscal management and migration outcomes. Number 1. Michigan. The Great Lakes state where net domestic migration was negative 28,539 in 2024 to 2025, the worst of any Midwest state, and where the automotive base restructuring has continued to compress the workforce. There's a state where net domestic migration was negative 28,539 in the year ending July 2025, where the automotive base that anchored the state economy has been under sustained restructuring pressure, where population loss has continued for years, and where the compounding effect has been the most extensively documented Midwest migration reversal in America. Welcome to Michigan. The numbers. Michigan, net domestic migration was negative 28,539 in the year ending July 2025, worst of any Midwest state. Michigan population has been flat or declining for over a decade. Michigan automotive employment continues to face restructuring toward electric vehicle production. Michigan Detroit population continues to decline post-bankruptcy despite recovery narratives. Michigan migration outflow has accelerated in 2024-2025 as immigration slowed nationally. Michigan automotive supplier restructuring has hit specific communities harder than state-level averages suggest. Reddit, quote, Michigan is the state that lost 28,539 residents in a single year, and the local conversation still describes it as a comeback story with automotive investment landing next quarter. What it's like. Living in Michigan is like dating someone whose family kept promising the comeback tour would arrive in 2015 and keeps announcing it every year since. Picture this. You're a 47-year-old suburban Detroit resident in 2026. Your home value is up modestly. Your neighbor at the auto plant accepted a buyout in 2025. Your kids left for Charlotte and Nashville in the 2020s. Your friend at a supplier firm has been researching Tennessee for 6 months. Your brother in Grand Rapids is doing the same math. Where it gets uncomfortable. Michigan's structural problem is that the automotive-driven economy that anchored Detroit and the surrounding metros continues to restructure while the tax base compresses. The workers took the buyouts. The population left for the Carolinas and Tennessee. The tax base compressed. The service capacity narrowed. The 2013 Detroit bankruptcy resolved immediate debt but did not restructure the underlying economic base. Sharp contrast. Michigan and North Carolina are both mid-sized U.S. states. North Carolina has grown its economic base substantially since 2010. Michigan has continued to lose residents. Same country, very different post-industrial trajectories. So there it is. Midwest states no one is moving to anymore on the public record in Census Bureau Vintage 2025 estimates, in Brookings Metro analysis, in U-Haul Growth Index records, in IRS statistics of income migration data. States where net domestic migration has been negative or negligible for years. States where the aggregate growth has depended on international immigration that just slowed nationally. States where working-age residents have been heading to the Southeast for over a decade. States where the reassessment shocks and property tax pressure have accelerated the outflow. States where the recovery narratives have circulated for a generation without producing durable results. The Midwest states with functional migration in 2026 share specific characteristics. They have diversified economies not dependent on a single sector, moderated cost of living, strong pension funding, and demographic patterns that retain working-age residents. The 10 states on this list have varying combinations of the opposite conditions. Some are still growing marginally on immigration that just slowed. Others are outright losing residents at accelerating rates. The migration corridors from Midwest to Southeast that opened in the 1990s have expanded in 2024 to 2025. The IRS statistics of income migration data confirms the pattern. The Brookings Metro analysis confirms the trajectory. The population base has contracted, the tax base has compressed, the service capacity has narrowed, the residents who could leave left. If this list helped, share it with the friend who lives in the Midwest and keeps insisting the migration story is temporary. Hit subscribe, because next we're breaking down 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled. Drop a comment if your Midwest state just posted. Another year of population stagnation. And remember, the worst regional migration reversal isn't the loud one with the headlines. It's the quiet one, where the kids leave for Charlotte, the retirees stay put, and the state population posts another year of stable while the working age base contracts underneath.